just about police complaints. This can be about any kind of discipline and discharge. And there is discretion. It just means, and so that the wording that is in our resolution was directly taken from the contract. And so it shall not be based on infractions outside of that time period. But the command staff have the discretion to do that, as they have always had. Any other discussion on the time?
Just add to, for the benefit of the audience, we do maintain the discipline files outside of 2 years. That's in their personnel record, and that does not go away after 2 years. It's just, as Dr. Jackson said, for consideration of whatever penalty the chief is going to impose. And we do set some more serious offenses by policy. So for instance, the police department has a policy that says a false statement, is a presumption of termination unless there's mitigating factors. So that could be your first instance of anything. And, even if there's nothing in the 24 months or even your, 20-year history, and there's a presumption of termination in that case.
Francis, do you want to tackle talking about binding arbitration?
Yeah, because this is something that we have heard a lot about, not just in Ann Arbor, but in other areas. Also occurring in Ann Arbor previously, prior to Chief Cox being here, and concerns with being able to fire a police officer, and for whatever reason, like you're saying, there are some mitigating circumstances, it might be their first offense, but it's egregious enough that they're terminated. But they still get to go to arbitration, binding arbitration, and could very well get their job back. And again, these are situations that may not come to us because they may not be citizen complaint driven. So we are relying on the leadership in the police department to make their best judgments on who are the good cops, and who do we, who would we like to be protecting us and serving us in the community of Ann Arbor. So I think that it's important to put that authority in the hands of the chief of police, and figure out, I think you said it best in your statement, when they're fired, they're fired. So if that's really what we're looking for. I don't know if there are concerns that come up in your negotiation process as to why this is there and the importance of it, but I don't necessarily know how this has actually benefited us over the years. I mean, like I said, we've heard from past police chiefs that this was an obstacle that existed within the police department. So if there's anybody that maybe has some more historical knowledge as to why this exists and what the benefit of it is for the people of Ann Arbor, I'd love to hear it.
Can't speak to the historical as to why it's been in there, because it is carryover language from year to year. I guess I could speak that almost every labor contract is going to have binding arbitration. I mean, most private companies have binding arbitration. I think that's just been the common practice. I think now we're seeing a movement to get away from it because, all the reasons, we lose these termination cases regularly.
Mm-hmm.
We don't go out seeking to lose them. But there's about, I think the statistic is something like 46% of officers who are terminated are brought back by arbitrators. One of the major hurdles we face with getting rid of it is, as you guys probably know, the state of Michigan has binding arbitration on the contract language for police officers and firefighters. And so we have to go before an arbitrator to argue for them to take arbitration out of the contract. And that is a hurdle that we have in our state law.
So you would have to go to the state of Michigan to get some kind of permission to get that taken out of our contract, or overall?
Yeah. So yeah, there's a public act, it's called Act 312, and it's unique for firefighters and sworn police officers. And if we come to an impasse in our contract negotiations, the unions can automatically submit it to Act 312, which is through the Michigan Employment Relations Commission. And that commission appoints an arbitrator, and there's a panel. So the city selects one, the union selects one, and the state selects really the chairperson who's the deciding vote. And anything that's in dispute about contract language, you have to arbitrate. So, hypothetically, if we propose this to the union, they have a right to go to binding arbitration over arbitrating, if that makes sense. So, and that's a state law thing. And again, it's unique to firefighters, police officers.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? Ali, are you raising your hand?
Maybe,
Okay.
you're really good at reading facial language. Maybe like later, going back to maybe a couple of the other points, but we'll the one talking about the 1 year duration on the contract, and then the ability of ICPOC to review personnel files, just to kind of again vet it a little bit with Margie and the chief if they're here. But I don't want to impede your progress that you're making on this.
Okay.
Circle back later.
It's okay. I was going to say, one of the great things about technology is that people are tweeting at us right now as we're doing our meeting. And so people are out there doing research and tweeting, and someone offered up that Ypsilanti's contract has 3 years for some specific things and different amounts of time for other things. So the community is weighing in as we speak. So that's awesome. Well, I think the last 3 resolutions are not particularly controversial, but we do need to establish a process by which citizen oversight, as a representative of the community, and we're the only entity whose sole focus is thinking about trying to improve the trust between the community and police, and the transparency of police processes, and having all of us feel comfortable with the accountability of police. And because we are relatively new, we are often forgotten about in things, and we're brought in at the last minute, and we're told we can't have any input on things, and then it turns out we can, and we have to spend a lot of time sort of arguing to get access to information. And so the last 3 parts on this resolution are sort of getting into that. We understand, and Attorney Radebaugh, you could speak to this a little bit, that there are some, so I well understand the psychological barriers, but there might be some good faith issues with having ICPOC in the room during contract negotiations. And so if you can explain those to everybody, that would be great. But if we are not able to do that, we would like is to be consulted. There are many things that we think about all the time in terms of police and policing, and as we talk with the community, as we talk with police, we think about things that that it would be good to consider in negotiations. And so we'd like the opportunity to be included in that process, and we'd like to be consulted at the beginning of that process. We'd like to be updated throughout that process, and we'd like to be updated through the end of that process. And so we understand as it is now that the Budget and Labor Committee, that subsection of council, gets updates on negotiations and how they're going, and maybe that's in the form of an executive summary or a memo or whatever that is. But that not even all of council is privy to what happens, or the CBA, until a couple days before they have to vote on it. And so we don't want to be in the process of looking at a collective bargaining agreement 2 days before council is going to vote on it, and then we have to peruse some document, with 50 legal scholars and 50 pages in 48 hours to try to discern, hey, there's a bunch of things in here that seem questionable to us. So we'd like to be able to offer some substantive contributions and have those contributions taken into account from the beginning. And then we'd like some timely and regular updates from the Budget and Labor Committee. And then the last piece actually has to do more with being apprised of what's going on at the state and federal level as it regards public safety legislation. So the city pays for a service that updates them on what legislation might be coming down the pike on a wide variety of areas. And we'd like to be regularly apprised of that by the city administrator's office. So as they are paying attention, as they get notified about House and state Senate bills, we'd like to be apprised of that as well. Right now, what happens is we form relationships with our state senators and other people in Lansing and in Washington, D.C., and they let us know about things that are going on. But that relies on us to reach out to them and to maintain those relationships and to keep, saying, hey, what's coming up? Hey, what's coming up? When the city is already paying for a service to do that. And there is no reason that we should not be notified of that legislation as it becomes known to city council. And so the very last piece of the resolution is addressing that. For example, the Michigan's Commission on Law Enforcement Standards has been made up of chiefs and other administrators, and it sets the standards for law enforcement training and conduct and operation in the state of Michigan. And there's now legislation that suggests that civilians should be included on that body as well. And so as city council became aware of that, it would have been helpful to let us know. I learned about it from State Senator Jeff Irwin, who said, hey, you guys are doing oversight, you should know this. But had we not developed that relationship, we would never have known that, for example. So these last three pieces are asking to standardize an information process, such that we are not spending the resources that we have trying to get information that should be regularly provided to us. Attorney Radebaugh, could you talk a little bit about those first two, the negotiating process and budget and labor, and how they get info and how it gets disseminated to all of city council and how it comes out from you guys? Because you're actually on the negotiating team, so you know the real deal.
Yeah, so we have, the council as a whole has delegated to Budget and Labor Committee to deal with negotiation strategy for all of our labor contracts. There's an OMA exemption to allow us to go into closed session with the Budget and Labor Committee, and that's what we do when we discuss negotiation strategies. So we do that, before the contract, during the contract. We've been regularly meeting with them as of late. And so from what I take it from here, you guys would like to be a part of that process. To answer that exact question, I need to follow back with Chris Frost, and I can get you an answer on that. I believe there are some exceptions where the body, so council, could invite people into the closed session under limited circumstances and not lose that closed session privilege, but I would need our OMA expert, Chris, to speak to that. So I can follow up with you regarding that issue. But that's pretty much how the process works. We get basic direction from the Budget and Labor Committee. I mean, we're not really going through the contract line by line with them. We talk about just different proposals of what direction we want to go, both non-economic and economic. And then the negotiating team goes and negotiates that. And, we provide status updates as needed. When things change, we meet with them. And then we meet with them, the Budget and Labor Committee, before it goes to council as a whole, to see if they have questions or what their thoughts are on, the tentative agreement.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions, comments, thoughts about that part of the resolution, sort of the information seeking process and trying to standardize that? Or are there other streams of information that you feel like we might have missed that are relevant to the work that we do? I think there are growing pains, and some of the growing pains have to do with other agencies getting used to the fact that we exist. And so we understand that, but we know that the work we do now has to be effective now, but it also has to be, we have to set up processes that work for the next, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, whatever that looks like. And so that's our attempt to do that there. Any other thoughts on that?
If I could, this already, exists in our ordinance that ICPOC should have, a role to play in many things, including, selecting our police chief and budget contracts. And unfortunately, I just think that we need something, and perhaps this can be done at a later date, something with more definition to it and more teeth. We meet 30 days prior to this, 60 days after that, setting real fence posts and markers as to when ICPOC becomes aware and notified. And it's not an afterthought. It's not just check the box, because that can be done regularly. And unfortunately, I think we need some more direction as to when ICPOC, what are the triggers for notification and input. With broad language, it just leaves way too much discretion.
I'm always in favor of pinning people down to 30 days, 60 days, 27 hours after you get this information. We want it. So we could definitely do that, and it would be helpful maybe to get some idea of how often updates happen, or sort of the timeline of how negotiating works. Sarah Birch has a question or a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to contribute that, I really feel like the commission's purpose and point is to collaborate and work alongside the police, that we can do our job the best when we are included. And it just really feels like we might as well not exist if we're not going to be able to actively participate. So.
Agreed.
Yeah, so we take our direction from council. So I'm more than happy if council, whether it's through a delegation or direction that they provide us to work with ICPOC.
So just maybe you can explain to us, Margie, a little bit with this last contract, if, time frame wise, when we kicked it off, and how many times, the negotiation teams met up till now, or up until the tentative agreement at least. So it gives us a time frame, because I think it's very important to say 30 days prior to the expiration of the contract, 30 days, after, or within a week of a tentative agreement, ICPOC is given a copy. I mean, some really good language and direction as to when these things happen in times and triggers, wherever possible. It's just there's way too much ambiguity.
Yeah, and each contract is different. It depends on how it's going in the room. It depends on how many changes we're seeking to make. What generally happens is months before a contract expires. In this case, I don't remember, but I think it was around May that police put in a request to bargain. So that's how the union comes to us about when they want to bargain, and it's always in advance because we try to get these contracts done before they expire. We met with, in this case, we started meeting with them in September, and we had a tentative agreement in January. So, I agree that I like timelines too. I'm an attorney. We love rules and timelines, but I think it would have to be 30 days once prior to us setting a negotiation date, I guess, or something. I can provide more specifics or suggestions, because generally the police would send us, the union would send us a request to bargain, and then we'd set a date, and we really have to set that date somewhat soon, because any delay is, could be constituted unfair labor practice. In this case, we didn't come to the table until January because I had just had a baby. So they were kind enough to wait till I was back. And also Chief Cox was joined us in, I forget, June or July. So, they wanted both me and Chief Cox there to negotiate. So. But, Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we actually have to get this to council for Monday, which means probably we've gotta hammer it out today or tomorrow. And so I'm thinking about your markers, one of which is that the police come with a request to bargain. And at that point, you guys set a date.
Yeah.
And so once you set the date, then perhaps that's a first point at which we could be notified that a date has been set.
Yeah. So we
And
set a
then-
first meeting date, and then, you know, it just, I can't speak to how long it's gonna take, because sometimes these things take a very long time. Sometimes they don't take a very long time. This one actually was pretty quick.
And so we have gotten this information. We've been able to talk to people on budget and labor, and we've been able to talk to some other people. And so we understand, we have a good idea of a process going forward, but could you talk about that a little bit? So so we have to get a recommendation to council by Thursday, so by tomorrow, because nobody's working on Friday. On Monday, council will meet, and on the agenda is a collective bargaining agreement, and they have to vote on it. If they vote on it, if they vote to approve it as it is, then the tentative agreement that had been worked out will be approved and will go into effect, and it will expire in December of 2022. And
Yes.
then if that collective bargaining agreement doesn't get passed, then I believe my understanding is there already a request for the next step to come in? Can you speak to that?
So I can speak to the next step in the process, if it's voted down, would be to go to mediation. That's also through the Michigan Employment Relations Commission. Those dates usually are set pretty quickly, you know, within 30 days. Following that, so for the whole timeline, following either the mediator, we wait to finish mediation, and then the mediator makes kind of a recommendation as to what they think this will end up being, and the parties can then go back to the table or can proceed with Act 312, or the union has a right to file for Act 312 30 days after submission to a mediation. Once it goes to Act 312, pretty much everything has to be done within 180 days. And I know that sounds like a really long time, but it's somewhat short for a process like this. So there's a pretty strict timeline as to how that process works. So that's, you know, an evidentiary hearing before a panel, witnesses, evidence, you know, kind of a more relaxed trial on the contract language. The standards are, there's specific standards in the statute. So, you know, you mentioned Ypsilanti. That is, you know, very helpful to us. We're not usually compared to them, but we look for other comparators, and the arbitration panel picks what they think are comparable municipalities. Like, for some reason, we always get compared with Sterling Heights, one Canton, and then the arbitrator looks to see what their wages, conditions of employment, and what their contracts looks like, and, you know, compare ours to them. And that's how they're supposed to kind of formulate their decision. For economic decisions, if there are economic issues like pension, overtime, wages, the parties both submit a best and final offer, and the arbitrator has to decide between one of those with no ability to fashion their own remedy for non-economic. So for all the items that you've proposed, the arbitrator would be able to fashion whatever they deem appropriate based on those statutory factors.
Can you talk a little bit? I think we've had some conversations about this, but for anybody who hasn't been involved in those, can you talk a little bit about the difference between mediation and arbitration?
Yeah.
So you described the arbitration process, but the mediation process, maybe explain how that's different.
Yeah. I mean, I personally am a big fan of mediation, because what basically happens is, you know, you go and you kind of go into a room, you introduce your sides, tell them why you're there. And then in general, what happens is the mediator is going to separate the two parties, and the mediator is going to play the devil's advocate. And so they're going to try and bring both parties to the middle. So they're going to come to us and say, look, you know, you guys had a tentative agreement on this date, the union ratified, you know, blah, 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 and try and get us to move a little bit. And they're going to go have that opposite conversation with the other party. You know, you're seeing what's happened. There's a national movement for this, like, change is needed. You know, that's basically how that works. And then the mediator is going to basically assess what they think the case will come out like and make a recommendation to the parties. It's not binding in any way. It's simply a recommendation. And then there's two paths forward. You know, you go to arbitration or you go back to the table. You know, maybe you see there's some room to negotiate, and it's not via the mediation process, to go back to the table and, you know, try to come to an amicable resolution.
And so we hear a lot of language about splitting the baby, which
Splitting the baby. I know I try to not use that in a public setting, but that's a very common term in arbitration. Arbitrators are, they're going to split the baby. You know, my thoughts on that are because they want to be picked, because the municipality, the employer and the union select these arbitrators through kind of a ranking process. And if you're completely one side, the other party is never going to select you. So there's generally about a 50-50 thing. You'll find, you know, for example, someone could be demoted. They may get their rank back, but they won't get back pay for that, you know, 9 to 10 months that it took to finalize the arbitration process. So stuff like that, that's splitting the baby. Sometimes, you know, we're going to have a termination. We're going to get, you know, I think I got one that was a 70-day suspension on a termination. That's a splitting the baby. I mean, but yeah, that's pretty common.
So I think one of the overarching things is that we're struggling with is just that I think the public locally, certainly, and even nationally are understanding the value of civilian oversight, but institutions are much slower to change. And we all are having some expectation of change now. And I think we feel the urgency of people, we feel the urgency of the public. And for oversight people, I think maybe we don't feel the urgency as being different, I think, because we've always kind of felt like this was really, really important work. So even when we were the only ones who cared about it, we were thinking about these issues. But I think a lot of what's happening, well, a lot of the problem that we're having in Ann Arbor is that we don't have established processes for us to be included in these conversations. And so we often find out about them later. I was invited to a budget and labor committee meeting about 2 hours before it happened. And some of it we all have to do better, or has to do better about recognizing that we're here, and because we eventually find out about these things and then we're just like really unhappy that we weren't included in the first place. And so that's a struggle that we have, and we want to be able to be more proactive. And so we're trying to figure out how to have more regular conversations with police about how to improve relationships and have real substantive conversations with them. And we're beginning to have more substantive conversations with the public about the kinds of things that they want and need and expect. And I think we have to do more education with council maybe about understanding that we function differently than other commissions do. And that we feel that we have a very unique obligation to the public, and that we are responsible to the public for asking really, really hard, uncomfortable questions, and the public needing to trust that we mean what we say, and that we are always doing our due diligence and research. And so part of what we're doing with its resolution is sort of catching up. And helping council catch up to where we expect to be. I think we expect to do more going forward, certainly outside the realm of the CBA. Most of our relationships with police and the community are covered in a collective bargaining agreement. But because that's on the table, because that's up for a vote Monday, you know, we've got to do this special meeting. We've got to do this kind of emergency kind of writing and review, and asking everyone, you know, within every judge and attorney and labor expert within 50-mile radius to help us go through the CBA with a fine-tooth comb. And we do appreciate all of the help to everyone who has helped us. Do you guys want to go back at all to any of the parts of this that we have covered already? Do you want to, Ali, I feel like you expressed some concern to talk about something that we had covered before. You want to go back to?
Just to vet a little bit, you know, again, with the legalities of it all, and under the second resolve clause, the second paragraph, or the first one under the second, the one that requests revision
Sure.
of
Sure. Article 26.
Article 26, yeah. Whether that is anything legally in the way, does anything challenge that legally, or is that just something that can be negotiated?
I mean, they may challenge it, but we could negotiate that. Because even under FOIA, everyone but police, we would release their personnel records. It's only police that has a special exception, and FOIA is permissive. So to me, it's not conflicting with the state law. It's just the CBA.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and just for those people watching, one of the things that often gets said to us is, well, you wouldn't want your personnel records on the front page of MLive, and that's not our intent. Our intent is to do good data collection and analysis of what's going on, not to publicize, complaints against police. The public needs to feel confident that we're doing our job, and so we need all the tools to be able to do that. But we aren't suggesting that we, then run to call Ryan Stanton or Sam Dodge. And
Can I ask a question to that point, Dr. Jackson?
sure.
So, I work with the Human Rights Commission a lot, and so they have a complaint process too, where private residents submit complaints of discrimination for private companies and stuff. And I know, to your point, I mean, they aggregate out and report out on that data, but they don't release the names to the larger body. They have kind of a subgroup that works on that. Is that what you guys kind of envision happening?
We have thought about that model, and we considered that model, and we thought about it in terms of another function that's unrelated to the CBA, and that may be a way that we go. There was a third model even where there were a subset of people, kind of like the HRC, who rotate and work on some complaints, and so so we don't know how that would work yet. We did it, and the HRC runs it very differently probably than the way we would run it, in that they have the very same people doing that all of the time, and we had a model where different people would rotate through and work on different cases. There may be, if there is, right now, all of the training that all of us do is accessible to all of us, and so everyone can be equally expert at looking at those things, and we're all equally bound by confidentiality. And I don't think we feel like that we have a leak problem with information. So there's never been a time that any of the information that we've seen in complaints has leaked out ever. But so I don't think we'd adopt the HRC model, but we have looked at a couple different models. We've tried a couple different models already. And so I don't know if we've settled on a particular one yet. We had a rotating one where groups stayed together. And then as we thought about, there was a point at which it seemed as if we'd only be able to look at police body cam and dash cam video from 8 to 4. Council member Lowy pointed out that was probably prohibitive and improper, because all of us are volunteers, and we'd probably have to do that after 6 p.m. sometimes, and so we might need someone in the police department to do that later. That would open it up to more people being able to do it, and so then our model shifted again. We also thought about specific kinds of trainings, and if only some people got that training, then perhaps only those people would be reviewing complaints, and so we've gone at this a couple different ways. Vice Chair Tadora Hargraves, you're still on mute. Oh, I can unmute you. Sorry.
There we go. One of the other things that this does is, as we are going through our review process, police have to create almost a new document for us, so that the items are redacted. This is this is separate from what they redact for lien. So sitting in a meeting one day with the deputy chiefs and the chief and some others, we came to a determination that they were actually going to take time to create a third document that professional standards would do along with their process, that would then be an investigative document that could be released to us. And so simply by having to redact the officers' names, it's creating more work. And that is more work that is separate from lien requirements. The lien requirements are predominantly heavy on the redaction of body cam footage, not necessarily the reports that professional standards create. So it would help us tremendously if we were able to see names, because then we could actually see the final reports that professional standards create without redaction, and it would be in a more timely manner.
And I know members of the public often ask us about whether we've gotten that sort of backlog resolved, and that was the part of the source of some of the backlog was just the enormous amount of time it takes to redact body cam video and dash cam video and reports. We have talked about lien, and we can have that conversation again at another time. But when we are watching body cam footage or something, if an officer has his or her radio on and information about another call comes across it that's unrelated to what we're watching, that may that the public should not be, to which we should not be privy, and so then that has to get redacted. There may be people walking down the street and they need to be, and so the process of redaction takes an inordinate amount of time, and for us to watch 1 hour of body cam or dash cam video means that we usually watch at least 4 if there are 4 different views to that. Officers and 1 police car or 2 police cars, you're watching an hour from each view, and that redaction has to happen for all of that. So it does take some time. Lien would take part of that. However, being able to see officers' names is not related to lien, and that is something that's just in the collective bargaining agreement. That's the only prohibition that stops us from seeing that, but it would allow for much faster release of some of the reporting that we get. And we've had to go through many iterations of reporting. I think the first couple of months we were on the job, we got some 1 paragraph reports, and we had to let the deputy chief know that that wasn't going to work for us. And so it's been a learning curve for everyone involved in terms of how much information we want. And we've run the whole gamut from, okay, if you guys aren't going to give us anything, then we want everything, to trying to come to some middle ground about in what cases do we need what kind of information. But there is a degree to which this makes it much easier on the police as well.
That was really helpful. Thank you. I just wanted to respond to Councilmember Rumwally. So, you know, if the officer's name is going out there, obviously in the public, could pose other legal challenges. But, you know, what I'm hearing is that's not what is going to happen. And, you know, I absolutely believe that. As you guys said, no complaint information has leaked out. And I know you guys have seen a ton. So yeah, changing this, from my perspective, there's no legal concerns.
And the commissioners are sworn. I know you're sworn in, and I think that's unlike other boards and commissions. Is that correct, Margie? We don't have Mr. Frost here with us tonight, but I know I didn't see what they swore to or what
they're all sworn the same way, but what is unique about them is they've signed a different confidentiality agreement that other boards and commissions don't sign, because they don't have access to the same type of confidential information that IPOC does through the complaint review process.
Okay, thanks, just putting that out there for the public.
Would it make you more comfortable if there was a whereas ICPOC have signed confidentiality agreements, just to call that out as part of the resolution, just as a reminder that we have done that?
You know, that would give us some greater comfort, Jude. Commissioner Walton. I just don't think people are aware of that, and you all are.
And I'd agree with that too, because in the event this does go to arbitration for whatever reason, and this is a topic that does come up, you know, I can say that you guys aren't going to release it, but by you guys committing to it via a resolution is helpful.
I'm happy to do that.
Continue on while I type.
I was just going to ask if there was a specific name to that different confidentiality agreement, or if it's sufficient just to refer to it as the confidentiality agreement.
That's a good question, because I think we just signed that just before one of our meetings, and I don't know if Denise had copies of them, but I know I didn't get a copy. I just gave what I signed to Denise.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen these either. I know that they exist, so I'm sorry, I can't help in that regard. We can definitely, if you put in confidentiality agreement, when it goes through the registrar process, we can make sure, I can flag it for someone to update. I'm going on vacation tomorrow, that's why I say I'm passing it to someone else, but we will change it to make sure it has the proper term.
We know what we're up against. We knew. We're like, the holidays coming, nobody's going to be in the city council building. Okay, so we can put that in here as well, and we can flesh it out a little more clearly. I can try to find the name of that particular agreement. If not, we can try to find a copy of it. But certainly, that is an important part of what we do, and it's an important part of the way we have operated thus far. And we have had several commissioners come and go, and we haven't had a leak yet. So we're very proud of that. We're not jinxing ourselves, though, because we're not superstitious. So is there any other areas in which anybody would like to weigh in on these? I believe that we do need to vote at least on some of the substance of this before we can present it to council, and we will not have an opportunity to have another official vote between now and the city council meeting. So go.
Ask the chair, is it possible?
Non-voting member wants to talk.
Yeah, go figure. Is it possible to get that language included about referring to the confidentiality agreement before you go to take that vote, so we have that in the resolution that was?
Can you see it on my screen right here?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I can do this. I mean,
refer to
that's actually accurate.
I was going to say that, I think, is all that sentence needs to be, right?
Yeah.
Can you see it, Margie?
Yeah, my preference would be that it says has signed a confidentiality agreement that, and says what it, I mean, I don't know exactly the wording that you guys signed. Does it say that we'll, keep all information learned in our roles as commissioner confidential? I don't know the wording, but
I think it does.
Okay, if we could state the purpose, that would be helpful too. And again, subject to tweaking based on whatever the wording is once we pull one of these agreements.
Okay, can one of you, Francis, Jude, somebody give me that language again? A confidentiality agreement that?
That precludes commissioners from
From sharing
discussing,
information.
right, sharing confidential information with the public.
Which from sharing with anyone.
Right. Yeah,
Oh, Now
yeah.
you guys can see how badly I type. Tweaks, Margie, what do you think?
Would you
Okay.
include personal information, confidential and personal information?
Yep.
Yeah,
No,
that's fine, confidential
I
and
think
personal.
confidential. One more time.
I'm sorry, I broke up.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Do you want the and personal, Margie, or is confidential just confidential?
I think calling out personal does help.
Actually, it's not personal, it's personnel.
Yeah,
Oh, I was like, what are you guys talking about with personal information? Okay.
yeah, it's confidential.
personnel information.
Personnel.
Right, because that's actually what we're specifically talking about.
Right.
Personnel information. All right. Beautiful. We didn't really discuss any of the other whereases. Are you all perusing them and making sure you're comfortable with them before we take a vote up or down on this, or
Can we
any
just
tweaks, other tweaks?
just a little bit in to finish that last sentence off? In their course of their work, just it doesn't, outside of the body, I think, it's something to and I'm sorry, It seems like it could use a little bit more description if it's possible to, whether it's the public, but sharing information and personal information, confidential and personal information obtained in the course of their ICPOC work with members outside of the commission.
I
No.
think, no, because there might be a time when if we are segregating ourselves that we might not share that even within the commission. So I think we have to say that it's going to preclude us from sharing confidential and personnel information.
You want to say with the public, like Francis suggested?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that, Francis. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks, Francis.
Sharing.
To the general public, or
Mm-hmm.
Better.
Okay.
Okay, this one is evidence. This is straight out of the ordinance. Mission statement. Self-evident. So are you guys okay with all these whereases?
Mhm.
We're really, really trying hard to stay on one page, but now, actually, we're still on one page, maybe.
so is it presumptuous to include in here the possibility of this contract not being approved on Monday by calling for a 1-year contract in the event it's not approved? I mean, I'm not sure if that's being a little bit presumptuous in this case.
No, actually, we were overly optimistic.
I'm sorry, it broke up.
We were overly optimistic. We weren't being presumptive that it would be voted down. We were so optimistic. We thought you'd be able to negotiate changes and vote it up.
Okay. Okay. And you don't.
Yeah, I mean, we have no idea how you're going to vote, and so I think we're trying to hedge our bets here. That if you vote it in, please add this stuff. If you don't, I mean, you still might vote to do something else.
At this point, we won't be able to add it in because of the other party.
Right.
We're not going to be able to make these changes without the other party agreeing to them, and they won't be there Monday night, to agree to these changes. So.
Right. Well, we're not presuming which way you're going to vote. I mean, if you guys approve the CBA as it is, all of this is null and void and moot. So it's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but I mean, that's the decision you guys have made, and that's totally within your purview to do so.
Okay.
I mean, we're not presuming which way you're going to go. We have no idea which way. We really have no idea how city council is going to vote on this. But we do have to ask for what we think is appropriate and what we think it's important for us to ask for, and we have to be responsible in that way. And so if there's a chance to come back at this is what we'd like to see. If there's not a chance to come back at this, then these are the things we're going to be really sad we don't see. And maybe not sad. We're going to be really, really unhappy.
I'm throwing this out. This could be really off track, but I'm wondering if in that second resolved, we have requests that if the city is unable to negotiate, should unable be unwilling?
Ooh, unable and or unwilling? You just want to go with unwilling?
I mean, just I'm asking the question.
When I was writing,
I'm not sure in our resolution. I mean, this is a little bit coming to Councilmember Ramlari's point. Is their ability to negotiate something is separate from the willingness to.
Right.
We can comment on the ability necessarily because there are two parties involved. But right. I mean, our request is to City Council, right? We're not in a position where we can make a request as part of the negotiation. All we can do is request to City Council.
Yes, we are not in a position to make those requests, so we have to ask council to make those requests of their negotiating team. And if they are open their mouths and do so, if they go back to the negotiating table. So it's really a matter of whether they're willing or not. So you are correct.
I think Attorney Radabauer is gonna say something that might.
Yeah, another option, and I know I'm probably not the one supposed to be trying, but maybe unwilling to or unable to successfully negotiate, because to what Councilmember Wally just said, I mean, city council can direct us to provide whatever proposals we want. I mean, it is a negotiation, and so, we can't force the union to accept these, but I'm actually fine with any of this language, but just adding, the success depends on an arbitrator.
Right. Well, not even that. I even think we're not even saying if you can't get it done, but we're specifically talking about that verb negotiate. I mean, we feel like the city has at least got to ask for these things. You guys at least have to try for these things. Not to say that the police union has to roll over and do anything. And my understanding is they never roll over ever. So I am not talking about your success in doing that or ability to successfully negotiate. But I do think it's the responsibility of council and the team to go try to negotiate these things that really impede the purpose for which we work.
We use the word unable rather than unwilling.
We had unable. You know what?
I was just going to have a suggestion, because I think that they're two separate things, and I don't know what council thinks on this. And I think that it could be unwilling or is unable to successfully negotiate. I think having the either or in there.
Yeah, how about this? Why don't you say if they do not? How about that? And then we don't have to address their willingness or abilities. Do you like if it does not?
Yeah.
That's better.
Should it be
a little more neutral? That's a little more behavior based. We're not talking about anybody's motivation.
I like that. Should it be, again, coming back to that addition of does not successfully negotiate? Or is it just does not negotiate?
Yeah, does not successfully, I think.
I'm and right now I am typing, and the group can decide.
Successfully.
How about if it doesn't make substantial changes? Well, no, because the city can't make substantial changes. It just has to participate in a process of that.
Does not achieve.
Attain. And Ali, you have to be careful because you were in the room where it happened. And so, if council is really angry about this language later, you're going to have to, tell them.
No, I don't think this will be the part that.
That's not the part. Right, that's not the part. You're right, that's not the part.
This is the commission's resolution. I would like.
Right, no, it's fine. I mean, we are nothing if we are not collaborative. And this started from our Commissioner Walton, so.
It comes back a bit to what's our intent here, and I might like that achieve or attain, because really we're most vested in the outcome and less so the process of getting that, right? What we would really like to see are these changes.
Yeah. Do you like does not attain better? Commissioner Birch? What are you thinking about Commissioner Evans, Othman? Attain? I mean, I think this is why we're here to everybody feels really comfortable before we vote.
I liked the unwilling or unable
When you die, you stay where you were.
more than
Okay.
Oh, there's more.
Unwilling or unable to attain?
Yes, that sounds nice.
Whoops. So we've got a bunch of options here. Does not, or if the city is unwilling or unable. feel we started with unable, we went to unwilling, then we went to does not, and I think perhaps we could go unwilling or unable. Does that
Seeing it reads
Yes.
better.
as you look at it, Jude? Unwilling or unable better?
I like that, is unwilling or unable to attain.
Okay.
I think we've hit every word we mentioned.
Well, more is better. Okay. Do you want to, Commissioner Tadora Hargraves, what are you thinking about this one here? Do you want to strike it, leave it? What do you want? Is it,
I
are
mean,
we,
I would like to hear from other commissioners. I'm happy leaving it there. City council doesn't have to go with it or not go. I mean, it's up to them. This is our resolution to them. I think that, you know, even if they sign the contract as is on, or agree to it as is, we have 3 years to go on it before the next negotiations. At least we have this resolution in writing and already given to them with them, you know, informing them of our concerns here. You know, I'd really like to hear what other commissioners think, because I have no problem leaving it there.
Commissioner Billups, were you about to say something? You lean forward.
I think we should leave it. I think it's been seen that it's a national, it's a part of a national conversation in policing, the whole thing. And I think if you recently read the article in the Observer from Dan Oates, who was the previous chief, and his estimation of how this is a national issue, I think we leave it. The council has the right to take it out or do whatever, but I think it's a statement that we need to make. So.
Commissioner Hoffman, wait, I can unmute you. There you go. Can you unmute yourself, Commissioner Hoffman? I don't think, we can't hear you. There you go.
Okay. I would like to leave language as is because I think I'm always thinking of being proactive if there are going to be changes in the future.
Mm-hmm.
This will be there, and we say that we had anticipated probably something like this will happen, and again, I think what the Commissioner Billups had said was arbitration is one of the I would say it handcuffs the chief of police really in administering and being an effective chief, because that was his complaint, Chief Oates, that having somebody rules against decision of a chief, I don't know what type of, it might affect the morale of the whole thing and the relationships. But I think leaving this as an option is fine. I'm okay with that.
Commissioner Birch, I see you nodding your head. You're just nodding. It's okay. You don't have to talk.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with the consensus. I think we wouldn't do the community justice, given that this is the discourse and the rallying cry is to advocate for their needs and include this in the resolution.
And we got some suggestions that our resolution should be short and sweet. I mean, we could do a laundry list of things. We could do more things on there. I'm sure council has the attention span to read whatever it is that we put forward.
Well, I mean, this again is going to be an ongoing conversation, and not going to be our only bite at the apple. I think, Commissioner Mohammed made a great point of being proactive and putting things out there right now that maybe not, want to only see in this contract, but in future negotiations as well. So, I think the binding arbitration is a huge issue, as been noted and talked about. Whether it's the elimination or a drastic overhaul of the system, something needs to happen.
There are some states who are in the legislature are considering eliminating it across their state. So we don't know what will happen here. As you all ponder more changes that we can make to this, because we can do anything we want to it, I would love to be able to put some definitions on timely and regular updates. I don't know how to do that here. If we say we want updates every 30 days, if we want updates every 2 weeks after whatever, if we want to be notified within 24 hours of a tentative agreement being made, if we'd like a notice as soon as there's a request to bargain.
I think, reasonable, the word reasonable should perhaps be put in there. I think this late in the game is going to be hard to figure out exactly what dates to be putting in. And again, this is your resolution, but I think that the commission can work on this more later on and ask council and give council more direction as to when they want those updates, when they do have more information to go on. But I think the word reasonable has some teeth to it, more than regular.
Well, we want them regularly and we want them in a timely fashion, so we want all of that.
In a reasonable time, but again, I'll leave it to the
reasonable, timely, and regular. How about that? We want it all.
I think that this is a good start, and I think that we can, hope that we'll all work in good faith moving forward, that, as we go into the next contract that expires and comes up, if we were able to say, we would, oh, by the way, we'd like 24 hours. If you get a claim to start negotiations or a request to start negotiations, we'd like to know within 24 hours. As we get further into this, we'd probably get a better idea of exactly the timing and if we want weekly updates or bi-weekly, we'll know that going forward. So I think just having these in here now is good, and then we can work in good faith moving forward to nail down what exactly the timing and number of updates would be.
Do we call a vote and then have public forum?
I think we need to call a vote on, oh yeah, I would think, yeah, call a vote on the resolution.
But is there any more discussion of any of the items before we do that, just to make sure everybody feels comfortable? Just moving it around so everybody can scan. I think
Maybe Lisa, the one about the confidentiality agreement with the public or press. I don't know how other commissioners feel about that.
That's a good catch.
Is the press not part of the public?
I think it just looks better if they're called out.
It's done.
towards the bottom if the request, I would ask that the second from bottom resolve clause, that it's asking for the Budget and Labor Committee give you those updates. I would ask that it's the city administrator's office or somebody.
Are they privy to that info as our Budget and Labor?
I think they're more privy.
How?
The HR department, our assistant city administrator right now is part of the bargaining negotiating team. Budget and Labor Committee, unfortunately, isn't in real time. I'd rather see you guys get that information more direct.
Is that better than now?
Yeah.
City
Yeah.
Administrator's office, okay.
It may be that council has to, I think council has to direct the city administrators, but Councilmember Rumwally is absolutely right. The city administrator's office would have more details.
Because the assistant city administrator is always a designated part of the negotiating team? I'm asking.
No, I mean, right now, because he's the chief negotiator due to his role, no, it's always the HR director is also the labor relations director. So that person is the lead negotiator for the city. I'd say the second position is Chief Cox because he really owns the contract. The rest of the team in this case was both deputy chiefs, myself. I sit there as, the legal representative. They bring a business agent from the larger POAM group who's, I guess, equivalent to me in that room, and then the HR liaison to police department. But
Should it be city administrator then, or should it be human resources? Or should we say chief negotiator?
Yeah, you could say chief negotiator. It's going to be the labor relations director, but maybe chief negotiator given the fact that we don't have an permanent HR director right now.
Okay, and then that would cover it in the event that chief negotiator is the labor relations person or the assistant city manager, whomever it might be.
Yeah, and I mean, if something, John may hold on to that depending on when an HR director comes in, if we're still in the middle of a negotiation. So that would cover all the bases.
Perfect. Thank you all for that.
I think the word office afterwards can come out, right? As chief negotiator.
Thank you, ma'am. Boy, this has been a collaborative effort for sure. Everyone owns this.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yeah. Whereas number 4,
Yes.
it's I think instead of using law enforcement, it's just go AAPD, because the one before that you had AAPD. Otherwise, law enforcement is like generic or
Got it. And it saves us a line too.
yeah.
Lisa really wants this on one page.
We'll try.
I just like clear, concise, parsimonious writing. I just, it's my, yes, I'm sorry. And I just don't trust, people's willingness. I'm sure it's fine. I'm just checking like semicolons, commas. I think I moved these around.
Lisa, did you still want to leave or buffer time for questions from
Mhm.
folks happening in the
I
beginning?
do. But we probably need to vote first.
Mm-hmm.
And so you all have to be comfortable that what we are voting on is correct. Does everybody feel okay about it?
Mhm.
Yes.
Is there a motion that
I move that we accept the resolution on behalf of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission to be presented to the council meeting on Monday the 6th.
I
is there a
second. I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you all for all of the work that you put in during this meeting, but also prior to this meeting, all the background research, who are offering up suggestions. Thank you also, and the information that you contributed to the meeting in real time. Kelly, can you tell if we have phone callers?
Yeah, so there are 6 people on the phone right now.
Can
All right.
So we can either check with them one by one like we did before, or ask them to press *9 on their phone. And that'll
Okay, caller, Councilmember Lally, did you want to make a?
Can we just call the callers out by their last 3 digits of their phone number?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thanks, Kelly.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. Okay. Do you want me to do it?
I can work through them right now.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Hello, caller. With your phone number ending in 735, did you want to participate in public forum?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, caller. With your phone number ending in 552, would you like to participate in public forum?
I would, very quickly. I just wanted to ask the commission and I guess council if they saw a benefit to, in some way, having ICPOC recognized as an actor in the contract itself. Right now, I believe the only actors are the chief, maybe the city administrator and city council. I wonder if it would be important to have it recognized as a contractual body.
I don't know the
That's my
answer to
main-
that. But I have written down, and I'm going to ask 2 legal experts. My email address is ljackson@gmail.com, and if you email me, I will answer your question.
Thank you.
Did you have any other questions or comments, caller?
One other last quick one. I know most of this discussion has talked about the kind of access to police misconduct records, but there are other areas of oversight and input that perhaps the council might want to, commission might want to think about as well, including a kind of review of educational materials and programs, whether the kind of educational programs that police are eligible for in the contract are kind of teaching materials that are consistent with ICPOC goals, for example. Might want to be something that we have input on. And that's all.
I think Commissioner Tadoro Hargraves is thinking along the same lines as you.
Yeah, I think that that's something that we could definitely work towards getting familiar with, not just what police train with inside, but also outside. I recently got an email from U of M regarding an online certification course that they're doing for social work. And, you know, it's not a full-blown degree or, you know, whether it be bachelor's or master's, but it's a certification program. So the idea is, and it's online, which is good too. So the question is whether or not these types of things can be encouraged for officers as a way to broaden their own scope as an officer, and on an intellectual level on how to talk to the public and know who they're working with.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Great. Thank you very much. Just a second. Hello, caller with your phone number ending in 602. Did you want to participate in public forum?
Yes, I did. I'm a journalist reporting on this meeting. I wanted to confirm that the attorney giving legal counsel here is attorney Margaret Radabaugh. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. I also had a question for Police Chief Justice, the Chief Cox.
Go ahead.
It is, thank you. Just going forward, I know you can't speak to the previous involvement this council has had with the police because you are relatively new, but can you comment on going forward, any commitment that you have to work more alongside with the commission and include them more on policies as they're being developed?
Are you looking for an answer now? I didn't know. It's like city council. Okay, sure, I can
You
answer.
get to answer when you come to our meetings. You can actually talk.
All right. No, I was going to say, we're looking to work with anyone and everyone, and they have been, for a while. I mean, that's our role and job, is to listen and to communicate, educate folks, and get educated on what's needed, what's wanted, within Ann Arbor, and certainly within the police department. So we welcome any cooperation in working with anybody and everybody, and especially at POC, on what we do and how we do it. And we're going to try to be as transparent as possible. So, yes, to answer your question, yes, absolutely.
Well, wait a minute, though. We made a request when the chief kind of first came on the job, and today, the Ann Arbor Police Department has done for the very first time. Do you want to say it, or you want me to say it?
Well, I'll put it out there. One of the first requests I think you all had was, why aren't our rules and policies published or online? And we published them today. I think we put a good
this afternoon.
Yes.
I know, right?
The public can go and see those. So we gather.
So we'll be posting links online. We'll like have them at the bottom of our email signatures, and all of the policies aren't up yet, but use of force is up. And I think the police department really tried to prioritize the policies in which the public was most interested. And it did require some time with the new chief because he had to actually read, get familiar, and make sure all the policies were. But that's happened now, and there are a boatload of policies that are now. I'll be tweeting, and or ICPOC will be tweeting, and we'll make possible so anybody who wants to email, we can send the links now. But it's a great step towards transparency so that people can just click a link and read about police policy.
Great, thank you.
Is there
Oh, sorry, I was just going to ask if you had further questions.
I was just wondering if the chief had any comment as to why it took so long to post the rules and policies to today. What was the stance previous to today?
So I don't know what the stance was prior to me coming here. I mean, previous to where I was, our rules and policies were posted online. So I can't speak to that, but I do know we needed a mechanism to be able to get it out there, and we had to pay for it. And we also had to review stuff to make sure that we weren't putting out outdated things, that I wanted to make sure that I saw the information before we posted it, because I was relatively new here. So the combination of that, COVID, a bunch of other things kind of put some delays on it. And another hiatus as well. So yeah, you know, there were a few things that slowed the process down, but you know, we're happy to say that it's now open to the public.
Yeah, I appreciate your answers. We look forward to your increased involvement going further. I hope.
Great. Did you have anything else, caller?
Nope, that's all. Thank you.
You are unmuted.
Hello, caller ending in 677. Did you want to participate in public forum?
Yeah. So I'm glad we're talking about, you know, working with the contract today. And I understand that's an urgent, pressing thing, but I hope at some point we can get back to talking about defunding the police and using that money on different type of services such as affordable housing and mental health services, things like that. I saw some recent things where the some cities such as Oakland, California, have taken traffic enforcement out of the hands of the police. And I think that would be a good thing to do here, and also everywhere. I think traffic, you know, when you're driving a car, that's the time when people are most vulnerable to being, you know, profiled. We have the whole driving while black phenomenon. And I think that if we could find some other way to enforce our traffic laws, then we would have a safer community. And so I hope that's something that we can talk about in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, caller. And we have one more caller. Hello, caller, with the phone number ending in 055. Did you want to participate in public comment today?
Yes, please. My name is Evan Redmond. I'm a Ward 3 resident, and I'm running for City Council. And tonight I had two questions. So part of what ICPOC is requesting is the ability to view officers' personnel files, which is partially, as stated before, to stop fired officers from being rehired. Can ICPOC take any actions to stop fired officers from other cities' departments from being hired to the AAPD? And conversely, can ICPOC take a role in informing other departments, especially those with no citizen police oversight, information about AAPD officers that have been disciplined and fired?
Hey, Evan, so in your question, you want to know if it's within our scope to influence whether officers with disciplinary problems come elsewhere come here, and then two, if it is within our scope to make sure that the Ann Arbor Police Department reports out into some sort of community database when an officer is disciplined here.
Yes. So I know that there was, I believe last year, a detective that was fired from the Ann Arbor Police Department when it was found out that he had disciplinary actions in his past from another department. And also there is a kind of a revolving door. I think that is definitely the goal of ICPOC and presumably the AAPD to stop disciplined officers from another department or the university police force, and I was wondering if there's anything that I can talk to you about it.
So sure, go. Unmute yourself. Okay.
Yeah, so I just want to speak to that a little bit. In 2017, the state of Michigan passed a law that's called the Law Enforcement Separation of Service Record Act, and it requires us, there's a legal requirement that a hiring department seek that information of the circumstances surrounding every employer that the officer has worked at, surrounding their departure. And then the reverse is true. So if we terminate an officer, there's now a legal requirement of state law that we produce the circumstances of why they left, whether it's they resign, but they're under investigation, to the hiring departments, and it, forecloses any liability against the city to release that information, but it does require that we do that. And so we did, and as soon as that law came out, we did put in place a process to try and we do implement this law, but that there's a state law designed to address your exact concerns, because they have been big concerns. And I know the Detroit News has published a lot of articles on that in the past. So we do have a process for that. Officers have to sign a release. It's a specific form that the state puts out. We have to release it. We have to give it. And because, a lot of officers, not a lot, some resign before it goes through the whole process, even the investigation or process. And this is designed to even get at that. So any circumstance surrounding their departure, if that helps.
And in the case of the officer who left here after discipline problems in Florida, just to be crystal clear, the disciplinary problems in Florida weren't revealed to be problematic until after he had been working here for some time.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yes, I mean, Chief Cox can speak to that, but as soon as our department was made aware by the department down there, action was taken. But yeah, we didn't know about that because it wasn't revealed until a court case years later.
Thank you very much. That's good information, Cal.
Thank
Great.
you. Was that the last caller, Kelly?
That was our last caller.
Thank you so much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn our special meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are officially adjourned. Thank you all for staying an extra 6 minutes. I think it's